It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to our inaugural Citizen Conversation for Change. I'd like to warmly welcome our live audience as well as our online audience today. We've got a very special guest. I think we're all aware that on the 24th of January 2022, a new, fresh, modern, yellow baby was born. And today we have the privilege of hosting the president of the Citizen Coalition for Change, President Nelson Chamisa. Let's all give him a huge round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, good evening.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the birth of the new baby. The first question I want to ask, President, flowing from your 2022 agenda address, is how is this new baby different from the politics that we've been doing in the past?
Well, I must say that the most crucial thing for us is the reformation of manners, the cultural revolution, the transformation of habits, but also a revolution of morals. We know that the politics has been associated with more the emphasis of the South. We are retrenching the South so that we put the citizens at the center. The representation of citizens has been very weak. We have seen that accountability of members of parliament and councillors has been very unpleasant. So we are different in the sense that what we are emphasizing now is to emphasize the importance of the citizen over and ahead of just the politician. So servant leadership, values, accountability, consistency, but also integrity. You can't be elected to represent your stomach. You can't be elected to look after your own circumstances. You are chosen to represent people. Show that representation. You have to consider the citizens first. That's how it is different. So you will see that we are going to crack the whip, particularly in the local authorities. And we thank God we have 0 MPs, 0 councillors. So we are starting on a fresh and clean slate.
Thank you, Mr. President. From what you're saying, it's not as though we are just going to be an alternative to ZANU-PF, as we've said repeatedly, but it sounds as though we're going to be an alternative to the previous style of opposition politics as well. Have I understood that correctly?
Indeed. In fact, we are not opposition. We are an alternative.
Yes.
And we don't want to be treated as opposition, because once you are called opposition, you start to behave as opposition. You even oppose progressive policies. We are an alternative. So it's a paradigm shift away from just disagreeing with the existing government. We must also be able to agree on progressive policies. But more fundamentally, we have to articulate the alternative paradigm, alternative policies, credible policies. We must be able to then articulate a credible program that is going to stand instead of the one that is existing.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, one of the key themes that came out of your agenda, Citizen Agenda 2022, revolves around the youth vote. Now, we all know that the youth vote is critical for a people's victory in 2023. If you are speaking to the young people who are here today, if you're speaking to your 18-year-old son, if you're speaking to the young artist who's sitting by the bridge as you described, what would you say to him or her about the importance of registering to vote?
Well, I'll tell them that being young is not a disability. Being young is actually an opportunity to make sure that you change your country, to make sure that you make a difference. The energy you have, the opportunity you have, the knowledge you have, and the expectations you have can only be realized when you have unleashed choosing a government that you desire. And many have said we are not going to participate in politics. We don't do politics. We do hip-hop. We do urban groups.
Dance hall.
Dance hall. Let me tell you, or we do R&B or reggae. Yes, you can do it, but politics will do you more. And you will not realize the beauty of dancehall because politics affects the flourishing, productivity, or even success of whatever you believe in. So young people, this is your task.
Everybody must register to vote. Thank you. Now, President, still on the theme of young people, one of the critical challenges the young are facing revolves around the right to quality and affordable education.
Indeed.
Now, we've seen the teacher remuneration crisis that's been sitting with us for at least a good 2 or 3 years.
Indeed.
What words do you have for incapacitated teachers and the parents of those who are concerned about how the education crisis is affecting their children? What do you have to say to them?
The teacher is the conscience of society. The teacher is the source of civilization. In any country, the teacher is the compass to civilization. And because the teacher is so important, we must focus on the teacher because everything stems out of a teacher. For us to have a president, I'm a product of a teacher. You are a product of a teacher. Even great parents, great fathers, great mothers are products of a teacher. Great pastors are products of a teacher. Ministers, MPs, but also bad MPs and bad presidents are a product of a teacher. So we must focus on really the upkeep of the teacher because it's so crucial. It's the pivot. It's one of the fundamental pillars of building a great nation. There can never be a great nation without great teachers in classrooms, in schools, in communities.
So is the citizen movement standing in solidarity with the teachers as they continue their incapacitation and their demands?
It's not just solidarity in terms of action and statements. It's also solidarity in terms of having a concrete response to the concrete realities and questions that the teachers are facing. The teacher needs a decent working environment. Teachers need a happy salary. The first thing we have to do is to take back the teachers to their pre-2018 salary mark, over $500, not the peanuts we are giving. I mean, when you give peanuts, you get monkeys.
Absolutely.
And when you get monkeys in classrooms, guess what? You have violence in a society, in a nation. So we must really focus on our teachers to give them integrity, to give them dignity. But not just that. We also have to make sure that the quality of education is improved. How do you improve it? Make the teacher happy, to also make education happy.
Now, Mr. President, you spoke of the pre-2018-2016 salaries. Teachers used to earn 540. I think now that's gone down to just over 100. A lot of them are earning just $3 a day. Not only that, Zimbabweans are now facing a record 49% extreme poverty, according to the World Bank, as well as record unemployment, something that you referenced in your Agenda 2022. In addition to this, the bad governance crisis has created a whole migration crisis in South Africa and the region. What will a CCC government do to alleviate poverty and restore the dignity of the Zimbabwean citizen?
Well, I must say that we are promising a great transformation, a great promise based on the revolution that we want to unleash. But transformation is not just in words. Transformation is in infrastructure. Transformation is in how we do business. Transformation is in our culture, how we do politics. Transformation is also in putting in place thought leadership. Emphasize on the theory of change. The theory of the development that we want to put in place is to make sure that once we have the citizens at the center, we are not only going to unleash the fullest potential for our people, we are also going to get the best to unleash the best for the country. So yes, in terms of the economy, we need to stabilize the economy. We need to restore the rule of law. We need to make sure that the human rights situation is sorted out. We need to make sure that ultimately we reduce the anxiety and uncertainty in terms of policy making so that people have predictability. I talked about currents changing anytime. You don't even know what is going to be the currents tomorrow. You know, Mutuli can just come and do something else. We don't want that kind of thing. We will unleash stability, consistency of policy, but more fundamentally, ease of doing business, security of investment, property rights have to be secured, but also creating an environment for business. Politicians must not be in business. Business people must be in business. The duty of a politician is to create a conducive environment for those in business to be in business.
Thank you. Now, Mr. President, it's no secret that you conducted a whirlwind tour of rural communities towards the second half of last year.
Indeed.
What key factors do you promise our rural communities under a new citizen government?
I'm sure you're aware of what we call the DURA, which is development and urbanization of rural areas. We have even gone further. We have the MURA bit, which is the modernization and upliftment of those rural areas. And we are saying, where the people are, there's an economy. Let's go into the rural areas. Fundamentally, put in place pillars of civilization. There are 4 pillars of civilization. Civilization, lines of water, lines of power and electricity. We need our people to have lines of communication. But more fundamentally, we also need lines of transport, road networks in the countryside, but also transform how our rural areas are designed. We need a developmental model that speaks to the rural economies. I mean, you go to Mtoko, they do tomatoes, fantastic. What can we do to the people in Mtoko so that their tomatoes are not, they are perishable, but they are destroyed as they are shipped to Harare? Why can't we just take them from Toko straight to the market? I mean, we go to Masingo, they do different sorts of commodities or products. Let's go and support them at that level. You go to Matabeleland, the Mpani worms. You go to the hardwood. A lot of things that are there. Fishing in Binga, you know. There's also even, you know, marijuana in Binga. You know, you can make a lot of profit out of that.
President, you want to make the citizens high.
I'm not saying you should smoke, you know, but I'm saying there is a lot of profit internationally if we are to tap into these local, you know, economies. That is what enhances the capabilities of our people. Wherever there's a people, there is commerce, there is business, there is activity, economic activity, and we must harness that and make sure that we build international brands out of it. Made in Zimbabwe, proudly Zimbabwe. We can do it. Look at Mazoe, you know, one of the best, you know, orange drinks. But look, what are we doing? It must be a global brand. Absolutely. But it's how we do it. Tanganda, you know, Katillo, you name it. So yes, the rural areas are our focus, and that is going to be our biggest issue. Not ruralizing the urban areas, but urbanizing the rural areas.
Thank you.
You know, balls have come into the urban areas. We want to chase them away and make sure that even in the rural areas, water is also piped. There's tap water. It's possible. They've done it in Botswana.
Absolutely.
They've done it in Rwanda. But it starts with understanding that policy making has to be done at a micro level. Look at what President Kagame is doing. Budgeting is done at a village level. That's where the priorities are. That's where people can monitor. That's where people can actually cause leadership, government, MPs to account. So rural is golden, and we are going to make sure that rural areas have the pride of place in terms of policy priorities.
Thank you, Mr. President. And on the subject of people, allow me to segue into the rights of women. Now, women make up more than 51% of the Zimbabwean population, yet their level of participation in the political space does not reflect this or their important contribution towards society. What will the citizen movement do to ensure that more women participate in politics?
Well, a number of interventions. Some legal, some political, but of course some cultural, some educational. But just to cap it all, we have to make sure that we restore the dignity of women at the family level, the role of women. You know, you educate a man, you educate a person. You educate a woman, you educate a nation.
Indeed.
And it's important for us to target women in terms of uplifting them in opportunities, starting at the micro level. If you go, most of the religions are peripherizing or marginalizing the girl child because of the beliefs, because of the culture. So we need to retrench all those cultures so that we are able to have a new thinking That's why we need a transformation of culture, a transformation of values at a family level, so that we also know that there has to be equity, fairness, and equality between the women, and the men, the girl child and the boy child, at educational level opportunities. That is the starting point. But more fundamentally, we also have to look at the inheritance laws. They are weird, they are bizarre. I've been a lawyer representing, women in cases where marriages have broken down. Women get a raw deal. We need a fundamental transformation so that we restore that dignity of women at that level from a lawmaking point of view. But more fundamentally, we have to also look at CEDAW and other instruments that promote gender equity so that we are aligned, even the sustainable goals, so that we are able to then do what has to be done for women. But in politics, we have to lower the threshold of hazard and risk. You know that, Fadzai, you have been abused so many times. When they see Fadzai, they see somebody who is looking for men. They even begin to give you men. But if a man is to also be in your position, they don't do the same.
Yes.
They don't bastardize, demonize, those who are active at your level. So we have to move from these stereotypes. It's societal stereotypes that we have to deal with, so that we have more women being able to step forward. We remove the gender stereotypes. Those who are in politics to save a nation and to develop a nation. That is what we must deal with. So I've said different interventions have to be put in place, but also some kind of an affirmative action.
Yes.
Not in a charity sense, but also in a clear sense to say, let's have more leaders who are women to represent, female leaders.
Thank you.
And that is how we are going to have a multi-sectoral intervention to make sure that women are part of the decision making.
And so will the citizen movement have a gender parity policy?
Indeed. In fact, we are considering, because we're still working on the Constitution, other institutions, our policies, our programs. Of course, we've refined on the values. At the appropriate time, we'll share our dream, our promise, and once we have launched. But we are also thinking of, doing away with the old structures that speak to the Women's League, the Women's Assembly. Let's just have women and men, in a political party structure, so that we have a 50-50 parity, and there is no marginalization of women. Because marginalization begins with this approach of being seen as if we have a separate, bifurcated or a lager mentality, balkanized approach to promoting the case of women. What we have to deal with ultimately is equality of all different gender.
Now, Mr. President, on the subject of marginalization, the Gukurahundi genocide remains unresolved, and many citizens in various parts and provinces of the country feel excluded from the economy and from society generally. What do you believe needs to be done to unite the citizens?
It's a fundamental national question. Historical injustices cannot be resolved by sweeping them under the carpet. We need to make sure that we place all our skeletons out of the cupboards and place them on the table, not for vindictive purposes, not for retributive justice or vengeance, but to make sure that we have rehabilitative and restitutive justice, making sure that we restitute those who suffered, but we are also very open about it. And you know that perpetrators can be the solution to this problem. There has to be truth-telling, there has to be accountability, but it has to be a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach. Let's engage communities. Let's have community leaders, traditional leaders, members of the clergy, pastors in the various communities, in Matabeleland or all the areas where there's been this kind of a problem. Acknowledge that it was a genocide. Acknowledge that it's something that is undesirable going forward. Because, acknowledgement is part of the healing, but it's also part of the repentance. If you don't acknowledge your sins, you can never repent, because otherwise sinning becomes a fashion. So we have to avoid this whole thing of trying to bury things, doing it secretly or Nicodemously. So let's approach this elephant in the living room openly and say what happened, truth-telling, reconciliation, draw a line in the sand, this far and no further, so that we don't repeat problems and mistakes of the past.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, on that subject of wrongs that have been done against the citizens, we have the big fat elephant in the room, the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission. Now, as we march to what you describe as a historic 2023 election, what steps has the Citizen Coalition for Change taken so far to hold ZEC to account, especially as regards the tainted voters' roll?
ZEC must not be Zimbabwe election criminals, but Zimbabwe Electoral Commission.
Yes.
That is independent, that is accountable, that is impartial, that does not, a referee who doesn't throw the whistle away to join the other team. Like we see, they do the bidding for ZANU. They don't understand that the Z in ZEC does not mean ZANU. It's Zimbabwe. And Zimbabwe is bigger than a political party. We are all Zimbabweans. There must be a fair referee. In fact, they hold the keys to stability in this country. If they don't treat this issue of elections in a free, fair manner, they are setting this country on a path of instability. So yes, they have to be professional, they have to be accountable, but we must also audit the commissioners in their behavior. You know, some have received funds, some have received certain trinkets, they are also getting certain benefits that make them unable. Once you are corrupted by receiving certain trinkets, you can't think and act professionally. So that has to be dealt with so that the professionalism and independence of the commissioners is enhanced. But also, you know, have to look at the technical stuff. Some of them are still serving in government. So we have an audit of all those so that they are particularly very independent. We're already doing that.
Right.
We also commissioned experts to start to look into the voters' roll. And we have exposed you know, some of the anomalies that we are seeing. And of course, we are going to act on them politically and legally, and we have even mass action and political action to make sure that we have recourse and there's a fair election. We don't want rigged elections because they also produce rigged policies.
Now, one of the things that you mentioned in your Citizen Agenda address relates to Zimbabwe's rank in the anti-corruption or corruption index. You indicated that Zimbabwe ranks 157 out of 180 in the world's corruption perceptions index. And also, according to ZEC, at least $2 billion is lost to corruption and illicit financial flows every year. $100 million is lost monthly to gold smuggling. Now, this is money that obviously could be used to fix schools, roads, and hospitals. What must be done to make the fight against corruption effective?
A fish rots from the head. It starts with the leaders. The character of any nation is usually the character of its leader. The character of any family is usually the character of the head of that family. So if you go to any institution, if you just want to understand who is at the helm, just look at the behavior of that institution or the council of that institution. So it all starts with the leadership. You know, the tone is set at the leadership level. You know, you can't tell others not to be corrupt when you make it your daily bread and your fashionable daily diet, you know. So it's important for the leadership to saw the difference and to act decisively. You know, one thing about corruption is that corruption does not come like a giant elephant. It comes like a little fly, like a mosquito. And before you know it, it has visited you in small, you know, bribes, and it becomes an elephant in the living room. And you want to deal with it, it deals with you. So you have to deal with corruption at the very basic of stages, and it starts with the leadership. That's the first one. But number two, there has to be very stiff penalties. I don't understand why somebody would be corrupt, they go to jail, they're given bail. But somebody who steals a beast, cattle, you know, that is almost 9, mandatory. And that's what we must make. People must be hanged if they steal public money. Because you are not just stealing, you are stealing a country, you are stealing a generation, you are stealing a future. And you must be dealt with as such. And that is the tough leadership we are going to provide. No stealing, no stick fingers, and no appetite that is ungoverned. No galloping greediness. We have to live within our own means. If you are a servant of the people, it's not about the self. It's about others. It's about service. It's about making... Why should you have the most expensive cars being driven by people who are in government? And yet people in the corporates do not drive such cars. This taxpayers' money. We just have to give you a wheelbarrow to transport you from one place to another. Why do you need an expensive car? You are not a Mpinga. Why do you want to be I don't know who the Mpingas are now. I used to know Jinimbi. So,
God bless his soul.
We have to make that distinction.
Yes.
But it's a leadership ethic. It's transformation of values.
Right.
It's reformation of manners. In fact, change of government is not just change of personalities. You can remove Mnangagwa, you put Chamisa. If you have not changed the culture and the values, you have not done anything. Because what you are simply doing is to change the appetite of those who are greed. You have one greed politician, but another one coming. It doesn't change a country. So we have to change values. And it has to be the ultimate answer to dealing with corruption. But also stiff penalties. Look at what they do in China. You go to other countries, they actually write by the airport to say that if you have this gift in wanting to ask for state resources secretly, please go back because you'll be punished heavily. That should be the way. Here in Zimbabwe, we have to draw a line in the sand. Heads
Right.
have to roll.
Thank you. Now, Mr. President, the last question I'm going to ask before I open it up to our live audience is about business and transformation. Now, Mr. Mnangagwa promised to open Zimbabwe for business. All indicators show that he has failed. What is the movement doing or going to do to gain the support and trust of the business community?
The business community ultimately has to be at the center of decision making. You can't make these decisions on behalf of the business. Mr. Mnangagwa promised that Zimbabwe will be open for business, but people have to pay bribes in order for them to have access. And it has been said by MPs, by people even from ZANU-PF itself. It shows you that there's a fundamental problem. What we need going forward is to engage the business sector to do what they know best, which is to be in business. And all we have to do is create a conducive atmosphere. Look at Lee Kuan Yew, how he transformed Singapore. He had to create a team and an army of business people who understood the vision that the political leadership was articulating. Look at Mahathir in Malaysia. That's how it is done. Roosevelt in the United States of America, Churchill, even Thatcher, Tony Blair. You need a core group of business people because politicians and politics must create an environment and not fight business and not undermine business through inconsistent policies or contradictory policies. You look at the monetary policy. People don't know what the monetary policy is going to be. Look at the fiscal policy, the budget, you can't even predict. There's no predictability and consistency. That is how we are going to at least bring sanity into the business community. Of course, investment is going to be a big issue, but people want security of their investment. Nobody's going to invest when their property is going to be stolen or money destroyed without any recourse. But also the rule of law. We need an independent judiciary where you know that if there is a dispute, a commercial dispute, adjudication is going to give you fair value.
Yeah, and swiftly.
Indeed. So those are the things to be dealt with. And of course, business people know that we are good for business. And they know that when we then come into government, this country is going to boom. I can tell you that Zimbabwe is the next big thing on the continent once we take over. Look and watch the space. 2023 is a big year, not just for business, for everyone. Because you see, we don't create jobs as politicians, but we create a conducive environment for jobs to be created by those in business. In that way, of course, government then is able to unleash the fullest of potential for business, for workers, for the citizens, and of course for consumers.
Thank you. Now I'm just going to open the floor up to our audience. If you've got a question, put your hand up. These are the kind of young people that I love who are all eager to ask. I'll start with the lady. If you can please assist her with the mic.
Thank you. My question will be directed to His Excellency. I'm the current Gender Secretary at the National Gender and Welfare Zinasu. So I speak on behalf of the largest constituency in Zimbabwe, which is the feminine domain. I hear that His Excellency pledging support and pledging to outline gender parity policies. My question, Your Excellency, is when does this begin? We were devastated in the past election, and now after today, after you've outlined your vision, we would want to know, as the largest constituency, when do these promises start to take effect? Do we wait for 2023 elections, or you have something in terms of numbers? For example, from the 26th of March, you have filtered this many women in for that ballot, and going forward, do we have affected the concerned women also taking positions, standing up for us for next year in 2023, representing us directly? And in terms of the women's quota question, what do you also have for us? When does this begin, Your Excellency? So that in the future, from today onwards, we would know that you are on our watch, being answerable to 1, 2, and 3 resolve as the largest constituency in Zimbabwe. And on behalf of the welfare of the students in all of Zimbabwe, I would like to ask His Excellency, what plan do you have in terms of promoting student enterprise? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the passionate, confidence and belief in your portfolio. Clearly, young female leaders need to be supported. People like yourself, supported in capacity building, but also, more importantly, supported in the platforms that you get to be able to represent the broader, society of our female cadres. Practical issues, parliament-wise, we have always said we are now moving away from the so-called toxic primary elections that are imposed from the top. We are moving into a community consensus process. Mm-hmm. So we are encouraging communities to make sure that they also put women first, citizens who are women and female first in terms of positions in parliament, positions in the local authorities. On our own, within the citizens movement, we are also going to make sure that representation, as I said, is actually on an equal basis, so that we are able to advance the agenda. So you can begin to look at how we are going to be structured. You can also begin to look at our policies, look at our culture. As we unleash them, it is actually a now thing. It's not about tomorrow or after 2023. Begin to judge us on the basis of our policies, our posture, disposition, and of course our orientation in terms of the composition. Look at how we are going to present this. Now, student enterprise, of course, our duty and our obligation is to engage the students. I mean, there's always been this approach of having leaders coming to impose solutions that are not coming from those who are affected. So we want to engage you, the students. Tell us how you want us to support you from a policy perspective, but also from a leadership point of view, so that you are unleashed, Let the female leaders, let the students thrive. And they can only thrive when we give you the opportunity to shine. That's part of the transformational politics that we are talking about. Transforming how decisions are made, so that it's coming from you, telling us what you want, rather than us telling you and promising you what you probably do not want.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, sir. Don't worry, I'm going to do my best. Just a quick question.
I'm sure we must have another session.
Yes, we definitely will have another session. These young people are so eager. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Advocate Fadzai Mahere, for giving me this opportunity. My question is directed to our visionary, His Excellency, President Nelson Chamisa. As the youth, we are more passionate about change, and we are ready to define, decide, and defend our future. But my question is, I just want to quote Thomas Sankara. He once said, a soldier without ideological clarity is a potential criminal. We as the youth, we don't just want to be supporters. We want to be the ambassadors of Citizens Action for Change. What we need is that ideological clarity. We want ideological school, ideological classes that are initiated by Citizen Action for Change. We want to be mentored by Citizen Action for Change leaders, so that when we speak with one voice. When I speak, people hear President Nelson Chamisa. When my colleague speaks, people must hear President Nelson Chamisa.
Yes.
So that's my first question. My second question, nowadays, elections are now data-centric. We need data scientists. We need technology so that we can win 2023 election. Elections are not just about the outdoors, but indoor is more important than outdoor. So, for example, I'm doing data science and systems. We want opportunities to volunteer for the party. We want opportunities so that we can use GIS technology for you, so that you can determine where to put resources.
So can GIS make me win the presidential election?
Yeah.
Please, let's talk after this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we can be the ambassadors of that. So I realize that most of the students, most of people are volunteering to register people to vote, but we want to volunteer in a certain way, and we want to be the ambassadors of this movement. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Those are basically comments. I'll ask the president to just respond briefly to those, and then I'll take the last question. Okay, 1, 2, 3 are my last ones.
Fadzai,
Okay.
I don't normally protest, but
The president has protested, so I'll just pick the man in the yellow, president. That will be the last one, and then you can just...
we can always create another platform.
Sure.
Yeah, but thank you, my brother. Very deep questions. The first one has to do with having the correct, ideological anchor. You're right. We don't want brainwashing. We want also to equip and mentor young people, young citizens, to be solid on the trajectory, on the revolutionary theory of this transformational trajectory. And I'll tell you that we've already begun a school. It's called the School of Leadership and Ideological Development, SOLID. So you have to be a solid cadre. You have to be a solid citizen. You have to be a solid leader, a solid MP, because you have gone through the issues to do with our history as a country. We are building people who are able to be loyal to God, the Maker, to be loyal to our country, its people and its resources, to also be loyal to the values that we stand for. That organizational, posture, what you stand for, and to be able to stand for that. So that is coming. We will then also have those who are willing to be part of the leadership school, because Africa's biggest problem is not just a problem of not having the correct politicians. It's a leadership problem. If we don't address leadership from a lower level, we will always have problems. So leadership question has to be fixed. Like Clinton said, is the economy stupid? In Africa, in Zimbabwe, is the leadership stupid? So we have to make sure that we deal with the leadership issue, so that we are able to breed leaders from students, breed leaders from young cadres, breed leaders at various levels, at church level, in communities, in the civil society. We must just have 100 flowers blooming of leadership. So that's the first one. The second one has to do with technology. Powerful point. And in fact, it's something that we are willing to then embark on. The citizen movement and the citizen philosophy is about the citizen. Volunteers coming with their various competencies. We have builders, come and build for change. We have farmers, come and farm for change. We have thieves, come and steal for change. So any competence you have, I also know that from other areas we have witches. Please bewitch those who stand in the way, of change. So every competence, let us volunteer for change. And thank you for your expertise. We really appreciate it, and I hope that we'll engage you and many others, professionals, accountants, lawyers, engineers, doctors, nurses. Let us all put our shoulders onto the block and change our country for the better. We are the best country on the African continent, but we can't assume or reclaim our #1 position if we have not taken the initiative ourselves in our various competencies, skills, and endowments. We are the brightest people in the world. That's why we have populated all the capitals of the world. But we have to make sure that we leverage on that competence for the benefit of our great country.
Right, so all that remains, Mr. President, is for me to Thank you very much. You
The
protested
young man.
because he's wearing yellow.
In fact, just give the last three, if that
Okay,
pleases
last
you.
three,
Sure.
President. Thank you very much for that
So
indulgence.
you can almost have a fair, share of the
Thank you.
test of government that we are going to have.
Thank you. It's all
It's
democratic.
always going to be about what you want to say.
But I'm going to ask you all, keep your questions short so that we can just accommodate the other three that have been mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. Mr. President, the question being directed to you. I welcome all the remarks that we have been hearing, but however, taking note of the keyword citizen, I have reflected on the people living with disability and those on the street. What word is there that ensures that there is policy crafting by the citizen and then policy delivery? Because we're having a case where we craft the policy as the citizens, but at the end of the day, there is paperwork that stops the policy delivery. So what are you going to say about that?
Well, in fact, thank you very much for what you have said. You have articulated so eloquently what is problematic about our politics. The citizen is not given the opportunity to make a decision. Let's go to those who have challenges so that they are the ones who articulate, who are able to drive policy, even its execution and implementation. I mean, look at what is happening in this country. The people who make fundamental decisions around public transport are people who don't even understand what public transport is. These are people who have private cars, who drive their own cars. They don't want to even bother to ask those who use public transport to say, is a Zupco appropriate for you? They'll just say, take a Zupco. They are benefiting from that Zupco because they are the one who did the contract. But they've not gone to the people to then ask the suitability of that public policy response or public policy intervention. It's the same thing for those people with disability, PWD. You have to go and ask them, because I can't pretend that I would know what the real challenge is, because it's unique. Unique in formulation, but also unique in execution and implementation. So we must engage the citizen at the center.
Yes.
Citizens who are in those unfortunate circumstances are the ones who must give us the policy prescription.
Thank you. Yes, so you're wearing red, but I'll allow you.
I think you are colorblind. You know that's not red.
Okay, it's pink.
I know you
It's
don't
fine.
like red, but no, that's not red.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, we've heard a lot about CCC and the Citizens Coalition for Change, but I think the citizens also want to know why they should vote for you at a personal level, not just about the Citizens Coalition,
Sure.
but you as an individual. What makes you the right candidate for this particular job?
Do you also doubt that I'm the right candidate?
No, not at all.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I did say that to intimidate you. But just to say that, thank you for that very kind question. I think when people are voting, they are not voting for personalities. They are voting for values. And I would say that the contest between myself and others, Mr. Mnangagwa included, is actually a contest between values. And I think you know the values I stand for. Clear, clean, accountability, no corruption, democracy, giving citizens their respectful place, their dignity, their responsibility and authority, allowing people to have their way and say. That is what makes us different. I mean, one thing I can assure you, and why you should vote for us, is that when Mr. Mnangagwa and his party become opposition, we will never deploy the police against them. We will never use riot police when they demonstrate. When they hold their rallies, they will be free to hold their rallies. When they attack us, they will not be in prison for attacking us. That we assure you. We will never hire, tear smoke or canisters or order, button sticks against human beings. That will not happen. There will be freedom. There will be justice. You can be sure that as students, you will have an opportunity to also enjoy not just academic freedom, but the autonomy, of tertiary institutions, so that you are able to have intellectual inquiry in an environment where you are free, where you are able to exercise your intellectual talents. That we can assure you. You will also be able to have education not being the preserve of a few who are rich. It will be accessible to all. Just like what was done during the Smith regime. And most of these leaders have benefited from the loans and grants, before. That is what we must go back to, so that education does not become a privilege and a commodity. It must be available to all. I understand it. Being a rural boy, I'm a rural boy who has now been a city boy. I understand the transition. So yes, that will help to also help those who are in circumstances of need.
Thank you. Now, okay, I'm going to just take one more. Just one more.
I'm sure you had picked on him to be the last one.
That's okay. The President has spoken.
No, you had picked.
That's fine. Go through.
But part of the duty of the President is also
It's
correct
to guide,
citizens.
absolutely.
Citizens who are mistaken.
This is true. Thank you very much for the correction, Mr. President. Yes.
Thank you. Mine is just a question that is more like a concern that I know is perverted the minds of a lot of citizens. In fact, what are you doing, Comrade President, to ensure that you ameliorate the issue to do with double candidature? I still remember the last time at a press conference when the spokesperson is addressed, she was very sure that the issue and the problem was going to be addressed. But up until this time, we are hearing a lot of things that are coming in. I may not be willing to understand the basis upon which that problem emanated from, but maybe how are you going to address the problem? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Brilliant question. Thank you very much. And I know that it's nagging a lot of people.
Yes.
I get it in my inbox, my DM. People keep asking, Mr. President, why is it like this? You must understand two problems. First one, old habits die hard. We're a new movement, but there are other people who are trying to import their old habits into the new movement. And these people are a dangerous lot. We are doing everything within our power to make sure that either they exercise and take off their old habits or we discard them. So that is the first thing, because you know that when you start something new, you have a new vehicle, people still want to jump onto that vehicle to contaminate it. So we are very conscious of that. That is the first problem. But the second problem also has to do with us being a new kid on the block. We still have teething problems, because we are so loved and people are so willing to represent this new baby in parliament, in local authorities. There's always going to be that kind of glitches administratively and technically, as has been the case. But there is an issue that we are dealing with. But going forward, I've also said, look, once bitten, twice shy. And I've learned my lessons as a leader. If I'm still the leader, because the citizen movement has to choose the leader, ultimately. If I'm still the leader, we'll have to make sure that we centralize the issue of who signs for the people who then become candidates. And surely one person can't sign for double candidates. What caused problems that we have too many people signing? Like we had 4 people who were signing. Some now sign because of proximity, familiarity, history, and other things. So those are some of the things we are trying to really flush out. It's not a walk in the park. It's not an instant coffee kind of thing. It's a very tough call. But I can tell you that you will not see the kind of problems. And you know that the buck stops with the leader, and that we are sure is a very concerning issue. But we did very well. I mean, you look at all the seats that were there, it was just 2 constituencies or 2 seats, ward seats for that matter, where we had challenges. But it's something that we are dealing with, and I've told the leaders who are responsible to deal with the issue and to make sure that at times you don't wash your dead linen in public, but I can tell you that the dead linen is being washed, but in private. And what we give you is obviously the clean linen.
Thank you. Mr. President, I think I speak on behalf of all the young people here and all the people who've joined us online in saying thank you very much. This has been a fruitful conversation. We strongly hope as the people who believe in the movement and who want to champion the cause of citizen participation, citizen engagement, and citizen leadership, that this will be the first of many. And you will continue to put us, the citizens, first in terms of your engagement. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the address. And I believe it behoves us all, as young people, as citizens, to play our part. It's not a question of throwing President Chamisa in the front of an army tank to save Zimbabwe. It's really the responsibility of each and every one of us to stand up, to ask the tough questions, to speak, and most importantly, to act for change in 2022. Good evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you.